Rhode Island Congressman David Cicilline. He's a member of the House Judiciary Committee, also a member of the House Democratic Leadership. He is the chairman of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee. Congressman, thank you for taking a few minutes. Well, let me just start on this news. You had the hearing scheduled for tomorrow. Your committee, you were hoping to hear from Don McGahn. The White House is now saying they're telling him not to show up. What do you do now?
Well, obviously, we hope that Mr. McGahn will appear tomorrow. This claim of immunity, which is really a newly created claim. I think the White House recognizes executive privilege doesn't apply since Mr. McGahn testified for 30 hours. And of course, you can't apply executive privilege after you've disclosed the communications. So now they're making this really broad claim that essentially says the president and his team are immune from ever coming before Congress. That's legally incorrect, and certainly a court will ultimately have to decide that. But I think, let me be clear, if Don McGahn doesn't testify, it is time to open an impeachment inquiry. The president has engaged in an ongoing effort to impede our ability to find the truth, to collect evidence, to do our work. And this is preventing us really from ultimately finding the facts and doing our work in terms of oversight. And I think we now have seen a pattern where the White House is continuing an effort to really impede our search for the truth. No one is above the law, including the President of the United States. And we expect Mr. McGahn to come before the committee and testify.
Let me just make sure I heard you correctly there. If McGahn does not show up tomorrow before your committee, you say it is time for Democrats to begin an impeachment proceeding.
An impeachment inquiry, absolutely. We are really left with no other choice. This is a president who, according to the Mueller report, engaged in 10 acts of obstruction of justice, who tried to get witnesses on his staff to lie, who has attempted to impede this investigation in very fundamental ways. And every effort that we made to collect evidence, to produce documents, to hear from witnesses, this White House has blocked. And there comes a point that we're left with no choice but to begin an inquiry so that we can actually get the information we need to make an informed judgment at the end of that process.
We mentioned you're a member of the Democratic leadership there in the House. Do your fellow members of House Democratic leadership share your view that if Don McGahn does not testify tomorrow, it is time to begin an impeachment inquiry?
That is my view. I don't know that it's shared by other members of the Democratic leadership. I'm a member of the Judiciary Committee, and I have experienced firsthand the frustration of not being able to get the information we need in the face of compelling evidence of misconduct by this president. We have to uphold the rule of law, not only as it relates to President Trump, but future presidents. If we allow this president to ignore the rule of law, to defy lawfully issued subpoenas, we're not only allowing him to behave badly, we're sending a message to future presidents. We have a responsibility to stand up for the rule of law, to protect the Constitution, and to make sure that we take the steps necessary to vindicate those important principles.
So what do you say it would be time to open an impeachment inquiry tomorrow? You say you're speaking for yourself. What will you do? You're speaking out publicly now. Are you going to call for a meeting of the House Democratic Caucus?
Well, I'll certainly, if Mr. McGahn doesn't appear, I will certainly argue to my colleagues on the committee and to our chair that I believe the time has come to open an inquiry. That decision obviously won't be mine alone, but I think there's increasing frustration at being presented with compelling evidence of misconduct that we saw in the Mueller report, and then beginning our work, and we've done this in a serious and sober way. We didn't rush to judgment. We said this is a damning report with substantial evidence of misconduct, but we have to follow a process. We need to get the rest of the report, the unredacted report. We need to get all the supporting materials, and we need to hear from witnesses. We've approached this in the sober, most serious way. But in face of a president and a White House that has attempted in every way to impede our access to information, to continue to cover up and conceal from the American people and from the Congress what the truth is, I think we may well be forced into a position to have to open a formal inquiry in order to facilitate the collection of the evidence that we need to see.
Well, you're talking about the importance of process. Let's stay on that for a minute then, because I think it was about 2 weeks ago, May 8th, if I recall, that your committee voted to hold William Barr, the Attorney General, in contempt. There has not been, the next step would be, in terms of holding him in contempt, bringing that before the full House, having the full House vote to hold him in contempt, then potentially pursuing some sort of legal avenue. We've also heard about these old methods the House used to have to enforce contempt citations. You're basically saying, though, if you're ready to pursue impeachment now, you consider that process, what, a dead end?
No. We have to look. The opening of an impeachment inquiry is what happens when the committee begins a formal process of considering the question of impeachment. That's during that process that you compel the testimony of witnesses, that you compel the production of documents, you hold hearings. That's the process that I'm suggesting should begin if Mr. McGahn does not appear. We would still be required to compel the attendance of witnesses who defy subpoenas. We're going to have to bring those matters to the floor for a vote and then begin a civil action for their enforcement. But it would be done in the context of an impeachment inquiry rather than just in the context of our normal oversight responsibilities.
Right. So in other words, it sounds like you don't consider it a precondition to launch an impeachment inquiry actually going through the process here of a full House vote on contempt.
No. In fact, it may well be the case that if an impeachment inquiry is open, that we would still be obligated to litigate all of these efforts by the White House to stop us from getting documents and witnesses. There's no reason to think that if we were open in inquiry, they would suddenly cooperate. My guess is the president is going to continue in his effort to conceal from the American people and hide information from the American people. So our fight to get to the truth, to be sure that we demonstrate no one is above the law and compel the production of witnesses and documents will continue. It would just be done in the context of an open inquiry on the question of impeachment rather than in the context of traditional oversight responsibilities.
Some of your colleagues there, your fellow Democrats, have indicated that one of the reasons they may be reluctant, or at least they have been reluctant to go forward with an impeachment inquiry, is the idea that it would not be necessarily seen as a broadly bipartisan move at this point. You've had Democrats calling for it or coming close to calling for it in some cases. Until this weekend, you hadn't had a Republican. Now you have Justin Amash from Michigan saying he considers the president's acts impeachable. Do you consider Justin Amash, one Republican member out of that Republican conference, coming forward and saying that enough to declare this bipartisan? Or do you think your colleagues will need more than one Republican to join you in what you're talking about now?
Well, there's no question he's a Republican, so it's officially bipartisan. But the reality is it's typically the case that these inquiries are very often, when they begin, are not bipartisan. But it's after the production of evidence, after the hearing of testimony from witnesses under oath, after months of hearings, that you expect that if the evidence supports an impeachment action, that it will be bipartisan. It's not necessary to be bipartisan at the inception. What you want is bipartisanship at the time the House is actually going to move forward with impeachment. So I think, we would expect that if we opened an inquiry and we began to conduct hearings, that we would not only kind of bring the Mueller report to life and tell the American people the story, but they would hear from witnesses that would hopefully have some impact on our colleagues as well.
Again, this hearing you were scheduled for your committee tomorrow to hear from Don McGahn. Right now, the committee is indicating it's going to go forward. You're saying if McGahn's not there, you're ready to sit there and call for an impeachment inquiry. Do you expect that you'll have colleagues on your side echoing your call on that committee tomorrow?
I hope so. I mean, I think, there are a number of members of the committee that are increasingly frustrated with our inability to get witnesses before the committee and for the White House to produce documents that are necessary to do our work. And we simply cannot sit by and allow this president to destroy the rule of law, to subvert the Constitution. And we have a responsibility. We took an oath. And if Mr. McGahn doesn't testify tomorrow, I think it is perfectly appropriate for us to move forward with an impeachment inquiry to begin the process so that we can compel the production of witnesses and documents to make an informed judgment. Otherwise, we will have surrendered our ability to make an informed judgment because the White House has continued to prevent us from getting information, from hearing from witnesses, impeding the ability of witnesses to come before the committee and testify under oath. We cannot allow this to continue. We have tried in every way to accommodate the administration in making these requests and been as patient as anyone can be, but we have a job to do, and this now would constitute a pattern if tomorrow Don McGahn does not testify at the direction of the president. This would be an ongoing pattern to cover up and conceal from the American people the full truth and some suggestion that the president of the United States is above the law, and we simply cannot tolerate that.
Okay, Congressman David Cicilline, a member of the House Judiciary Committee and a member of House Democratic leadership. Thank you for taking a few minutes with us.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.